I used to think that communications or learning how to talk or knowing how to talk was just another mediocre skill that really doesn't matter. Like, okay, everybody can talk. How can it be so important? However, after learning a lot about communications, I now realize that communicating with other people and learning how to speak properly and clearly is probably the most important skill that anyone can learn. Probably as important as business, if not more important. Because knowing how to communicate with people like, for example, customers or other businessmen, your family, your girlfriend, your friends, literally everywhere is going to determine how successful you are. You see, Andrew Carnegie, he was an American steel entrepreneur. He was the CEO of the company, I believe. And he had a lot of workers who were a lot smarter than him. They were intellectually, IQ, their intellectual capacity or intellectual capabilities were way higher than his. They were way better at the job than him. However, the thing that he says is that what makes him become the number one is because of his ability to communicate at mass and influence a larger mass of people. People that are usually higher up in companies. Maybe if you're in a job and you see someone who's more extroverted and knows how to talk, they're higher up in the position. Because yes, you might be better at the job, practically. However, people that know how to influence others so that they can, know more about you and your skills. Because if you don't know how to communicate properly, if you have a job, for example, how can you communicate to others what it is that you have learned or have applied to the job? If you just do your job and you don't speak to anyone, just do the practical work, don't talk to anyone, just stay in your lane, you don't really stand out as much, and people will never know how smart you are unless you communicate to people how smart you are. You see, Henry Ford, I think, said this quote, but his ability to arouse enthusiasm amongst his people is the most important and valuable skill that he has ever learned. And the thing about communicating, is not specifically that it's about talking as much and as good as possible. You see, the most important thing is letting other people talk, being genuinely interested in them, and, well, with the power of appreciation, if you influence people by appreciating them, they will instantly like you more, because people like to feel important. And so this was just a little bit about the EQ side, the emotional intelligence side of it, but for some practical communicating tips, there are a few things you can do. First of all, you need to control your volume of your speech. When there's something intense, or if it's just normal talking, then you talk at normal speed like I'm doing. But then when you want to emphasize key words, you slow down the tempo a bit, maybe lean forward. And then you also adjust your melody in your voice, because your voice is an instrument. I love to play the piano, and it works the same way. You have high notes and low notes. And so sometimes you want to go lighter if it's more happy conversations, or lower if it's more serious, more dramatic. You don't want to keep the same tone like this and just talk like this, because then you sound monotone and boring and you sound like a robot. Next up is hand gestures. Obviously, you have all this space around you, so you can use your hand. I still need to work on it, actually. I've only just recently learned, but when you just use your hands more and you don't just sit like this and talk, you just let your mouth move. Speaking of which, you need to use facial gestures. Use your eyes, use your everything about the face to communicate more clearly to people what you are talking about. Next up, you don't want to say or ah. I mean, this is probably obvious, but it is a hard thing to cure or to get rid of, because it's an ingrained habit inside of your mind. Instead of saying and ah, you need to talk slower, and then when you anticipate yourself saying it, just pause and just stay silent for a second. And so once you do that, maybe you're silent for 1 second, and then as you get more used to it, you're silent for 0.5 seconds or whatnot, and then you don't say ums anymore. Nobody can notice them. But speaking of which, silence is actually very important for communicating. When you have some sort of document, when you structure your text, you don't put all of it on one singular section. You split up the sections, the sentences, and you use the dots. And that is exactly what you do with pauses, because then people are allowed to process the information more clearly and have time to actually understand what you're talking about. If I were to talk like this, and then I can speak however I want, and you would probably understand what I'm saying, but at the same time, I can talk however much I want, but if I don't pause, then what can you process? What did I say 5 seconds ago? Maybe you don't understand because I'm talking so fast. Next up, is that all? We've got volume, melody, hand gestures, facial gestures, slow down. I think those are the main sections for this video. I don't want to go more in detail. But if you just master those things, and also the emotional intelligence side of things, you will become a really good communicator. Because I'm an introvert, and I never thought I would ever care about talking that much. I used to never talk, but I realized very quickly when I started up my business just how important it is to communicate properly and with confidence. Because in business, in banking, especially in sales, it really is about influencing and arousing enthusiasm among the people that will really lead to your success. Another thing about communications is that it is one of the biggest leverage skills you can have. If you have a business, a regular business, you trade your body, your physical body for money. So time, your physical body and such. But when you can use your voice to influence thousands, if not millions of people, like with a YouTube channel, then you produce more value than that singular job. Because yes, the job you might think is just as valuable, but in reality, if you can influence that many people, it will lead to more impactful, how do I say it, results for your time, especially. Because if you can just speak to a few people for a few minutes on a YouTube video, it gets 1 million views. Versus if you speak to one person on in real life, you can see the leverage here. It doesn't add up. If you can teach people about your job or something, instead of doing the job yourself, you also have your side business where you communicate clearly how you do your business and this and that. Communications will allow you to leverage your skill, and like on Andrew Carnegie, you will rise to the higher ranks because you communicate clearly and you communicate with intent and with genuine interest in the other person, because you never communicate for yourself, you communicate for the other person. They're the main subject, not you. Once you realize that it's not about you, you always want to learn from them and hear from them, then that is when people will like you. Anyhow, just a quick little video about communications and such, business, and honestly, read How to Win Friends and Influence People. It will literally change how people perceive you and how you perceive people. And it will teach you a lot about the psychologies of people, because that is also important in sales for business. Anyhow, thanks for watching, and I will see you.